In the early years of South Park, there was this running gag of Kenny dying in almost every single episode, followed by Stan and Kyle's,
"Oh my god, he's killing Kenny! You bastard!"
The joke, honestly, if you can even call it that, I never found it all that funny unless it was something ridiculous like in the movie. It grew stale pretty quickly in the minds of co-creators Matt Stone and Trey Parker, and they felt they had to find a way out of it for good. And obviously, the only reasonable way to do so was to kill Kenny. But for real this time. In comes Season 5, Episode 13, Kenny Dies. The whole episode revolves around Kenny dying, as you could probably tell by the title. Except, unlike their usual quick and brutal deaths they would typically hand Kenny, it was a slow and agonizing death which showed the different grieving processes for the three friends, Kyle, Stan, and Cartman. The episode was played seriously for 0 laughs. Trey and Matt thought it could be so uncomfortable that it might actually make people laugh. But it really just sort of bummed everyone out.
The idea with the kids for the first time really give a shit that Kenny's dying.
Yeah.
Is that idea of like, what if we played it totally, your best friend is dying.
But the whole concept was, let's do a whole 21 minutes without any laugh. That's super serious. And I wonder if people will think that's funny, if they think it's lame, they'll be bummed out. And it ended up, no, that's a horrible joke.
It's the stupidest joke.
By the end of the episode, Kenny was officially gone, and so was the running gag that plagued them for so many years. After his untimely death, Butters had his 5 seconds of fame as the 4th member of the main 4, and then Tweak followed soon after, only for Kenny to take his rightful place back in the show in the Season 6 finale, Red Sleigh Down. However, there's something you may not have known. It wasn't always going to be Kenny who died. Originally, Matt and Trey had their eyes set on other things. Their brutal murder scheme was directed at one of the other members of the Bro Ship. That poor unfortunate soul was none other than Kyle too. In the first few seasons of the show, Kyle and Stan were immensely similar characters, practically interchangeable from one another. This stemmed from the fact that the duo was based on real-life best friends, Trey and Matt, who, after spending so much time with each other over the years, had become twins in a way.
Guys, who would you say are your role models?
Well, I think I'd have to say my biggest role model is Matt.
And I guess I'd have to say mine is Theodore Roosevelt, for his work with the Rough Riders in the Spanish-American War.
So because of the similarities, they wanted to get rid of one of them and replace the loser with Butters, who they began really loving around the same time as all of this. After going back and forth between which of the two to rid themselves of, they decided it was just easier to get rid of Kyle instead. Stan's dad, Randy, was already on the road to relevance, so there was just too much extra baggage to get rid of with Stan. Kyle was simply the easier target. Their original plan was to have Kyle move away. They wanted it to be a big emotional thing and really bring some real continuity to the show. They also wanted to leave a door open just in case Kyle leaving backfired on them. Moving away is a much less permanent thing than dying. I guess the concept of death is an anomaly when it comes to Kenny, though. But that idea was thrown out the window rather quickly. They tried to move on from their issues with the character interchangeability, but it just kept eating at them, and by the time Season 5 rolled around, they knew they had only one option. They had to kill Kyle.
Dude, we're not killing Kyle. Ugh.
It's hard to imagine the show without Kyle. I mean, he's been an integral part of the show since its first episode. But what if they actually did kill Kyle instead of Kenny? Well, obviously there would be no voice of reason. I mean, the torch would probably be passed on to Stan, but Stan was always a little less grounded in reality than Kyle. That's one of the many things that did help them stand out from each other just a little bit. The guys would be a complete disaster, especially with Butters' plan to take Kyle's place in the crew. It would simply be chaos without their knowledgeable grounding factor. Obviously, Stan himself would be a mess. I mean, Kyle is his best friend. When you're that young and your super best friend moves away, that'll leave a mark. But the real disaster would lie with Cartman's character, and how he would cope without the other half of the frenemies trope. Much like there can't be light without the dark, or love without hate, there is no Cartman without Kyle, or vice versa. This idea is only furthered by the Season 10 episode Smuggler. Said episode follows what happens after Kyle moves to the city of Francis. Said episode follows what happens after Kyle moves to the city of San Francisco, and how all the boys deal with it. Stan, of course, does anything he can think of to get Kyle back. But Cartman, after spending his time trying to replace Kyle with Butters, who just isn't cutting it for him, he goes the extra mile, and fights through a storm of smug to get Kyle back to South Park where he belongs. Honestly, the whole trying to replace Kyle with Butters thing is meta funny when you consider that they were planning to do that 5 years prior. Kyle and Cartman's dynamic is one of the most important and strongest bits of the series. When they're fighting, it's gold. When they're working together, it's gold in a whole different way. It's a true yin and yang kind of deal, and I can't even begin to imagine what South Park would be like, or even how long the show would last for, if we were deprived of the Kyle versus Cartman dynamic. Essentially, killing Kyle would have brought upon the death of Eric Cartman. Kyle's death would have most likely put the sorely needed development of Kenny on hold for an even longer period of time. They would have either begrudgingly carried on with the whole, oh my god, they killed Kenny gag for a few more years until they actually began to resent Kenny and killed him permanently, leaving us with only Stan and Cartman from the original quartet. Ultimately, Kenny being the one to meet his premature fate was a good thing for the entirety of the show. It gave Matt and Trey the freedom to explore different characters even further, allowing them to become fully fleshed out fan favorites to this day. It also gave life to Kyle as a character, instead of allowing him to dry up and be an anchor of sorts dragging their show down. They nourished him and made sure it was easy to differentiate between Stan and Kyle. He now as a character holds many of the same traits that his mother has. He's hot-headed, headstrong, but very caring right down to his core. He simply wants to do what he believes is for the best, whether that involves leading people in his direction, or just warning them to stay safe if they decide to stray. All in all, I'm glad it turned out to be Kenny dies rather than Kyle dies, because ultimately a lot of good came out of it. It put the show on track for what I believe to be its golden era. So for that, I'm grateful for the unsettling heartache that this episode brought upon my 8-year-old self-psyche.